Hello, writers. Welcome back to another installment of the Rep Files. Appreciate everybody who is watching. I'm here today with my friend Jen, whom I've known for a very long time, who's a literary manager. So, Jen, I will allow you, or ask you, allow you, God, that sounds awful. I'll ask you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Lee. No, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. And yeah, so I'm Jen Au. I have my own management company. I worked at various companies like Untitled Entertainment for about a decade, and I started off my career working at CAA in the talent department, and before that, for a music manager at a company called The Firm and an independent production company, really starting out. And I'm an SC Cinematic Arts grad in the Critical Studies, what used to be the Critical Studies department. But honestly, I didn't imagine growing up that I would be working in this business. I'm an only child. I grew up in a family restaurant, latchkey kid. And I just watched, devoured film and television. I loved it. I learned how to walk in heels from, watching I Love Lucy, and I don't know. I was thinking earlier today about the Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, Woman of the Year, and thinking about how, I always thought of modeling a future marriage on that dynamic, right? Of a woman who could work in the world and also, be a wonderful partner at home and have someone who supported that. And so I say this all to say that I think there is incredible power and responsibility in the entertainment that we create. And, it's such a privilege to be working in it now. But yes, and I'm a Californian, so I grew up in Southern California and Northern California. And yeah, I'm just, so intrigued and excited by the changes that we have, and seeing where we go in the future.
Love all that. So, you said you grew up family restaurant. Where did you realize when the moment hit that you're like, oh, I can actually go down this path that ultimately brought you to SC?
Yeah, actually, I discovered that at SC. So it seems that I didn't even realize that there was film school, film and television school. Sounds really naive now, and I don't think I couldn't have told you the difference. Now, obviously, things are changing, but the agent manager difference, what a representative does, how the business of the business works. Someone I know calls it the architecture of the business, who teaches at USC. And I couldn't imagine that. So I actually had really became a film and television major because I loved it and I planned to be an academic and be teach in that space. And then it was just through interning that I saw the business side of it and that I felt I could really access the gifts that I have that I like to utilize on a daily basis. So, and that left and right brain, being, creative and also being detail oriented and being, behind the scenes and being supportive. And, there's so many things you can do in this business, that I think it's just about finding what really taps into the special qualities of what makes someone unique.
Absolutely. Now, as you said earlier, you were in representation for talent. You tried your hand at different things as an intern coming out of SC. What made you gravitate towards management and specifically literary management?
Mhm. They've always been a big reader, right? And I represent writers and directors and book authors as well, primarily for their book to film across all genres. And I think the ability of material to take you to a different place, right? It's a way you in a way you get to travel and learn and experience so many different things. And I've always loved that, to just dive into those worlds. Right? And I think writers can be world creators. It doesn't matter if it's two people in a room or, a giant galactic universe. You've built a world because there's nothing on the page until you've created it, right? So I've just always loved it. And so working in management, literary management specifically, it's getting to work with those creators and getting to talk about the stories. And I think every writer, every person really, has core themes that are important to them and that come through in their work. And that can be no matter what type of story that someone is creating. So I really love that, getting to be in partnership, getting to be in community with, and through the creators I represent, and then getting to talk to them about not only one piece of material, but I would just say, their own universe, right? Their body of work, their career, and if I want to use words like legacy too. And I think that is quite a privilege to be able to do that hand in hand because I do see it as a partnership.
Now, how is it different being it that you worked with Untitled for a long time and then have gone on to do your own thing? Before that, you were at other firms. How is it different working with a larger firm or working on your own as a manager? And how does it impact the client ultimately?
Hmm. Yeah, there are so many different facets to that because I will also say it depends on the company someone's at, right? I think that and similar to the agent question, right? Of where they are. Is it the place or is it the person? Right. And I think on a manager level, it is so incredibly important that a writer, director connects with their manager, right? Someone who really truly sees them. And I don't think that matters if you're at a big company or a small company or a mid-sized company, right? You want someone who sees your work, will champion you, will be really proud and enthusiastic to be picking up that phone and pitching you and advocating for you. So I think those things don't change, right? I think that, there's definitely the balance. Some companies have many different departments within them, right? And companies that I've definitely worked for in the past, those have changed around, whether there's newer divisions and the company broadens, or also sometimes scales down, right? But again, I think it depends on one, your manager's ability to, and how the infrastructure of the company supports that, right? Because that could be a great thing. Now, I'll say, and knowing a lot of other independent managers or managers at smaller companies, we've built a foundation of great relationships, right, with each other, with different companies, so we can be supportive really across the board. And managers, for those who don't know, don't tend to poach clients. So we have much more, I would say, collegial experience with each other that way. So it's not uncommon for me to be working with a manager and have, their client as part of a project, or, vice versa.
So let's roll it back a little bit and talk about your job as a manager. What do you ultimately do for your clients? What should a writer or writer, director, or director seek for their manager to do for them as you build careers together?
Hmm. I do feel it depends where someone is in their career, right? And different needs for different people. I think for folks who are more emerging, one of the biggest important things I think to ask first is, where do you need help? Right? Where do you need your support network? The question in interview, that gets asked of, what faults do you have, or the challenges, right? Where's your growth area? It really helps me to know how a client works best and what may be challenging for them. And that could be in whether that's how they communicate or how they actually write and work, right? Whether someone may be great at outlining and some that's actually detrimental to their process, right? Those are things that are really helpful for me to know, and it's helpful if someone's taken the time to figure that out. In terms of what a manager can do for a client, right? I definitely think of it as with a client. I do feel there is sometimes an idea of when someone has a representative, then they get to be really hands off, where that's really where the work begins, where the
Yeah.
journey continues. And, I definitely recommend and love it when folks are out networking. And when I say that, I don't just mean up above, it's, down, sideways, across different groups of people. You never know where a piece of information or help can come from, and building communities, right? The same way that I would. And, how can that be supportive, and really strategizing with my client when you're talking out whether how you're sharing material or how to go through a development process with other partners, just really having great open communication. So, I think I'm saying sort of in a larger scope, I would say having a partner to give honest, helpful feedback on material, having someone who will be sharing your work and helping build your relationships, and then talk about what to be working on next, right? And that is all together all the time. It's always moving parts, and also having someone who'll help navigate through when you have something in production, or and through that whole process. So it's not just the beginning, but someone, depending on if writer director, what that all looks like. Yeah, someone who really be a guide and a mentor for you in that process.
Now, as you said, as a manager, you should be a guide because clearly, especially for emerging writers, one of the benefits that you bring with you is your knowledge of the industry, your knowledge of career building because you've done this a number of times. Um, how important is it that the writer, the director, the client is open to that and listens to it for the long-term health of the relationship?
Oh my goodness, so important. Well, yeah, I feel like, I'll say this. I think communication is a key across the board, right? And I think in life in general, knowing what we don't know or acknowledging it is one of the biggest things we can do, right? And I think if maybe a good way to be thinking about it, a framework, is just getting curious about the process. And instead of taking it, and I say this if anyone is feeling, I would say, hesitant about advice, right? Or thinking about that. One, I like to think that I might be one of the safest spaces for someone, right? Like for a client. No one should ever feel like they can't call and talk to their manager.
Yeah.
Uh, but this should be a safe space for you. So, and then I would ask that in return, right? And I think that's incredibly important, that it's respectful and openly communicative, and understanding that the Brene Brown clear as kind school, I definitely believe in that. But I think it's incredibly important because one of the things I'm looking at, and this is even when I'm considering signing a client, is if I'm giving them feedback, how are they taking it? And it goes back to that sense of curiosity where, okay, instead of having this reaction, take a breath, give yourself that beat, and say, why is this note being given? Right? It could be on the script, it could be about a process, and know that likely it's coming from a place of wanting to be helpful. Right? And what will be helpful, what will help someone grow, what will help the script become better, what will help the cut be stronger, all of those things. And if someone gets curious of general note behind the note idea, right? Maybe someone, and this is not just me, but let's say you get a note from someone and it's doesn't feel like it's solving something exactly, but there's something behind it. If someone is adamant that this has to happen this way in the script or this process, then they're missing where the note could come from and being solution oriented, right? Um, so I think that sense of curiosity is incredibly important. And but going back to what I look for when I'm considering the work with someone is that if they're combated with me, I'm thinking of how they're going to be with a producer or an executive or studio notes, network notes, and that is temperament mindset as well of, yes, this is a creative business, but it is a business. We're
Mhm.
creativity, commerce, right? And people want to work with people who will take things to the finish line. And, I do think it is thinking of oneself um, as, yes, there's the creative, but there's the end goals too, right? And, um, the difference between compromising and being compromised and all of that. I think that, yes, everyone should know when something's important to them and, creatively in those conversations. But also, I think hearing the notes and being able to take that guidance and growing, right, is incredibly important because now it's tougher to break in more than ever. So to do that, the work has to be stellar, and someone has to have that energy of really taking this seriously and wanting to deliver and grow a career.
What are some of the ways in which writers and directors can really prepare themselves for this industry, both on the craft and knowledge front, so that when they start working with you, when the hard work begins, they can deliver on it?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say being a student of the game, right? And when I say that, it is if you're in production, if you get the opportunities to shadow, be on set, great. If you want to, blogs, podcasts, all of that. One of my clients is the co-host of the Screenwriting Life, and Laurie McKenna, and really listening to the pros, right? And also listening to hear what works for one's sensibilities and not. I mean, like what can you pick up, what resonates, what will help make your work stronger, right? Um, and I would say, back in the day, I was reading Deadline, which you absolutely can, Variety, Hollywood Reporter. There's now The Puck, Ankler, taking in the information about the ecosystem of the business and where you fit into it, right? And where that process is. Also, if you can, and this is also part of the uh, educational process when working with representatives, is the legal side, right? Like, okay, you want to become a writer. I think that there is a difference between you can write, you can be craft, but there's also a craftsperson, that there's being a writer and being a working writer and making the jump, right? And having that be a sustainable business, which is in post strike, post so many different challenges in the business in this world, a challenging thing to do. But making oneself aware of look at the WGA minimums, right? Look at what will it take to have a sustainable career for you in this moment. A lot of people are making that shift while they're working another job. Right. And so I say, great, even if you sold your script, look at how that breaks down monetarily. Look
Which,
at,
by the way, all the schedules to that are on the WGA site.
yep, just type in WGA minimums. You'll see them. You'll see
Yep.
the category of time that they're in, high budget, low budget. If you're rewriting, if you're optioning, um, just take a look, nuts and bolts of what that looks like. If you're looking at it from a sustainable career standpoint, look at if you're a weekly in a writer's room or, all of that. And because I think it's so important for writers to you end up thinking to think of the business of your work, right? And you can hand it off to other people, sure. But I think the more you understand it, the more um I think clear it becomes, and that thinking of it as the longevity of one's career, right? And I think that also is something that I'm looking for when I'm working with people is it's not just I want to sell this one script, right? So many times people reach out saying, I need a rep because I have this one script. It's more of okay, that could be you know an appetizer to the rest of the meal of your work. But it's always going to be what's next. And I think that is incredibly important to think about.
So, what does a writer's career today, post TV contraction, which we're still in, post strike, post all of those things, what does being a working writer look like today?
You know, I think so much of it, especially if someone is building, is writing. And that sounds a bit, it may sound a bit surprising or counterintuitive, but I think the more writers can write and create, or writer directors writing for yourself, um, the more opportunities there are, right? It creates more irons in the fire.
Yeah.
So the clients that I have that are most successful are the ones who are really creating on a regular basis. And I do think that you have to move from thinking about ideas, that ideation to creation. You have to make that shift eventually. Um, because otherwise, then how else is your career going to move forward? Right? So I think that's incredibly important. And then from there, it becomes building blocks of, hopefully that script's amazing and you build new relationships and someone says, I love this. What else do you have? And it could be some idea that you have or script you have or something they bring to you. But it's something that builds from there and people can share your work when they love it, right? I love hearing, oh, I got your client script from so and so, or the the viral type moments with pieces of material, right? It's a very exciting thing when that happens. But that it takes generating the work and showing up and having, I will say too, having the support systems in one's life to do that, the structure to do that, right? What is the schedules on your time? Knowing if you have very limited time, if there's their job, understandably, thinking of the hierarchy of needs, right? Everyone's more creative when you don't have to worry about food in your stomach and a roof over your head, right? And I'm never going to say to someone that the creative process, is prioritized over living, right?
Yeah.
And to do that. But it's being honest about, okay, I have an hour a day. What is this hour going to be? Right? How are you going to use it? And what is going to be the most efficient and helpful way for someone to have a creative process, right? And that's different for everybody. I mean, everyone could have different things that stop them in that. So going back to figuring out how best someone works, is incredibly important.
Now, you've always been very discerning about who you work with and bringing people on, which I really appreciate. And I think any writer and any director should be wary of somebody who's signing everybody everywhere at any given moment. What excites you about a writer on the page and in the room, that makes you go, "Ooh, I wanna read more. I want to work with this person." Let's start with the page and then go into everything else.
Yeah. I wish I could define it. And, I generally tend to say it's like the definition of pornography. I know it when I see it, right, on the page. It's just, it's a certain alchemy, right? I will say, I don't know. I feel like I can feel someone's energy through their words, right? And feel them and what excites them and the themes and all of that. And there's certain energy in just even the way someone writes. So I will say, and if someone is saying, "Oh, trust me, get to the third act, then it'll be worth it," it almost never is, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is, if I can tell normally within 5, 10 pages if I would even consider it. And there's just something in the flow of the writing that'll speak to me, the way someone's working with character, the way someone sees the world, right? That I'll say, okay, this is different, right? So, um, going back to the how someone knowing how they work best, it's also important for them to know that the stories that they wish to tell, thing that comes across in the work, right? Also, and I still do development with my clients all the time, right? Giving notes and all of that. Especially now, if I get an incredibly long script and it doesn't have to be that way, I am going to wonder about the editing process, right? And even, and I said before, in terms of if I'm meeting with someone and I've read their script and I'm giving them feedback, that's part of in the room of what it is. But yeah, on the page itself, it's hard to say, but it just has to be something that really, really grabs me and that I'm not going to look at the page count. I'm just enjoying the ride.
A lot of writers here today that it's all about concept, it's all about an actionable script, it's all about how widely can you take that script in order to get it out there. Do those things compute into your decision when you decide whether to take somebody on? And is it an automatic if you take somebody on based on the script that that script will actually go out?
Hmm. These days, I generally like to know I'm coming on board. What is the next thing that is going out into the world? And are we on the same page with that? I think that's important. I also think that it's important that a piece of material is as strong as possible. And I would have always said that, but now we're in a time where there's not a lot of development funding around, and people are looking for a variety of reasons to have something that can be ready to go as soon as possible. So, I would say that and there's not a lot of time for that development or time, desire, aptitude, etc. So, um, having someone who is, dedicated to having a great script is important. I do think that there's diminishing returns on development, right? That there is a point that you hit where the script's not necessarily getting better at a level that is necessary at that moment, right? Maybe if there once a producer comes on board that they may want to do tweaks in one way or another, but at some point there can always be a change in the script. There can always be more. So trying to really hit that sweet spot of you did as much as you can and then now it goes out into the world, because I do know that there's also the tendency to keep correcting.
Yeah.
And that I would say is one of my pet peeves of if in one week, I haven't gotten to my weekend read and I've got 5 drafts of the script. That's an exaggeration. That has happened. But it's more of if it wasn't ready, you don't need to send it out, right? Like take the time and be thoughtful about one's work, because that going out into the world is representative not just the writer but of myself, right? So yeah, I think that is yeah, it really important to be thinking about one's craft in all of this, and yeah, how to refine.
Now, how important are competitions, things like the Blacklist website, today for writers that are trying to stand out, and get your attention? Is it important to do well in competitions? Is it important to apply to the TV writing fellowships or to put a script up on the Blacklist and pay for an evaluation and see if you can get an 8? Do those things help a writer stand out, help a writer get attention, or are those diminishing returns as well?
I imagine different reps have different thoughts to this. But for me, I I don't read coverage or tend to, and because I don't know who that reader is, then generally the points thing is not as interesting to me, right? I think that there are some competitions like Austin, I would have said the nickel in previous years. I think it is an incredible loss of how that has shape shifted. And I think it's interesting and notable. And if I get those queries, still request a script every now and then from them. But yeah, personally, seeing a review from like a blacklist site with this number doesn't necessarily equate to me. I'll look at it and say, does this concept interest me? Does what this person is saying interest me? Then yes or no off of that. So yeah, I think if it's something that is helpful for someone in their own writing journey and process. I think that's incredibly important, right? And there's different programs around as well, and different organizations that I've worked with, and it's great to know when someone is connected to them. Um, but yeah, I think it's one where if something is helpful to someone's writing process, but at the same time, I know with the contraction of so many different companies, was it Coverfly that doesn't exist anymore? I can't
Yep.
remember. But and with the nickel changing, that um it is harder to think about how to break through the noise, right?
Hmm.
And I'll say a vast majority of my business comes from referrals.
Yeah.
So it is whether, and that goes back to someone building their network, right? Or whether that's from a client, which is always nice when they refer somebody, or from a lawyer, agent, um, executive, producer. So sometimes it's just hearing from someone else.
Now, you mentioned agents, and I know a lot of writers are not quite sure whether they should get an agent first, a manager first. How does it work? When an agent should come to the table? I'm a big manager first person. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I would tend to agree. I do think right now it is a tough moment for agent or manager to be bringing anyone aboard, because we're wanting to, build and focus and help the clients on our rosters, and it's still a moment of contraction. But I'm very hopeful for next year and beyond. I do feel like someone benefits from a full team, right? If everyone is being supportive and helpful and working, having someone else to make that call, strategize, all of that stuff, helpful. Why not? And the lawyer is a part of that, right? And I know, that 25% may sound like quite a bit, but also 25% of zero is zero, right? So just the math of it. Um, I've just, I think I've generally always felt the idea with the agents, the if you build it, they will come idea. And if there's things going on in your universe and someone calls you, right, that is the moment. That makes sense. Um, I think having that manager first and partner in crime who can help with that in the moment, the navigating of that, can be helpful. And now also looking at the makeup of your team, because there are a lot of agents who've become managers, right? So
Mhm.
is someone's manager more have an agent sensibility? And there are some agents who are also a little more managerial, right? So I think that it is looking at really the recipe of someone's team, and how that makes sense for them, and that will change at different points in their career.
Love all of that. Last question. You've given us a ton. What advice do you have for writers who are emerging, who are trying to make those next steps into building a writing career, whether it's craft related, business related, a little bit of both? What is your advice?
Mm. Well, this going back to what we were talking about, what I'm looking for on the page and in the room, right? Um, Really honing one's story. This not the story you write on the page, but the story of oneself. Because I can guarantee everyone has something special about them, right? And I think owning that is so incredibly important. Figuring out what one's talking points are. Um, and I think framing that into how someone does what they do. And I say this as I see people who are coming into it that have varied life experiences, and they'll say things like, well, I'm coming to this late and I haven't had experience in this, and I'm doing that. And thing is, I would rather hear someone, feel someone, embrace the wholeness of who they are, because it's incredibly valuable to have life experience behind you and come with whatever perspective you do, right? So being able to articulate that, and own it, right? What makes someone unique and their gifts. And um, that, I think, the energy of that, focusing on what someone is versus what they are not,
Mhm.
is that comes through in a meeting and that comes through on the page, right? So no apologies, right? For one's background. Just own it, have the confidence. That's so important. And the collaborative nature of that. So when I say that, being collaborative, being open, saying like, okay, oh, I'm in this writers group, I'm in building this, right? Getting to hear that. And that is really beneficial for the writers themselves, right? Be in different groups, be in different communities. Community is not just one thing, right? How are you building your career? And that could be through the different fellowships. That's a great way to build community. It's not just about access
Mhm.
to agents, managers, executives, etc. It's like you're really your own cohort, right? In your own class. And where can you find those pieces of connection? Um, and yeah, so I think those are things. And then um, writing, right? Creating, giving yourself that schedule, that structure. Because once you have that time, then I think it allows, structure can allow for freedom, right? And like there's you can read up all the books you want, right? Like the War of Art is a favorite. And I think also making time to think about what else fills up your cup. When they say that, because I think bringing the totality of oneself, that is what comes through in the work, and that comes through
Mhm.
in meeting with people. And because if it's just about that writing or it's just about that script, I think it doesn't allow for as much creation as one could have, right? And just get exciting things to talk about, right? So I would also say if someone isn't, when I see someone is ready to be in a room tomorrow, right? I definitely practice pitch with my clients and, give notes on that and all that. But in terms of taking a meeting, if someone is um, a little more shy or learning how to do that, take some improv classes. Or listen, the TED Talk, looking at the people who are training for TED Talks or, all of that. I think that's important too, because you will have to pitch and pitch for jobs, pitch your own projects, pitch yourself when you're meeting people at mixers and events and all of that. I think that's a really great thing for someone to have in their arsenal. If you're a director, learning how to work with actors, right? That is really helpful. But just having those skill sets in your toolbox. And yeah, and having as much as these are tips and tricks and things, I would say having the grace and patience with oneself, right, through this process, because it is commitment every single day, right? And saying, do I choose to do this? And if you want to, step into that ring, thinking about how you can best arm and support yourself, right? And yeah, I would listen to every podcast that there is, every like yours, like everyone else's, like get different points of view, see what resonates. Um, and also just if you haven't read scripts, many of them, read them,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So many great ones. If there's a movie that you love and you haven't read the script, go do it, right? And just see it in that. Maybe very different from the script that's sold to the shooting draft to all of this stuff. But I think again, having that knowledge, having that kind of in your bones feeling, and yeah, and hopefully also that there's just a fair amount of passion and fun because it is the marathon, as everyone says. And I think it is finding what keeps that spark going. And what story that is for you, that lights you up and that will light the room up when you talk about it. And I'll say this too, that some of those I've said this, the idea going back to people being, shy or whatnot, I will definitely put myself in the social introvert camp, right? Like this business can definitely be a lot and a lot of energy and whatnot. So, but I will say that I don't believe that the power of someone's voice has nothing to do with volume.
I love that.
And it's about you can be a quieter person and command a room, right? I think is about conviction of one's spirit um, in the story that you want to tell. And yeah, and the joy of it, right? So bringing it back to that. Um, that this business and the stories we tell and all that it takes so many different voices to do it, and we need new voices, and I'm really hopeful of new distribution channels, new different ways, because there are definitely people in this country and in this world that we are leaving behind, stories that are not
Hmm.
told for them, to them, by them, in so many different ways, that we need people who can live and breathe and fill that space. So, but I think that that starts with our own personal journeys first.
I
How
love
you?
all of that. That's all brilliant, and I hope that everybody listening really listened. Because I think all of that is incredibly important and informative for anybody who is looking to gain traction out there and be seen.
Well, I hope that this is something that's as helpful, and I really, oh gosh, I'm excited to, get to learn about and read new voices too. And I think the writing process, the creative process is so valuable for us as individuals and us as audience members. And yeah, it's quite the journey.
Isn't it though? And you get to
Yeah.
be on the ride.
There we go. Yeah, you're on the ride together, right? Well,
Absolutely.
the roller coaster. So, but yeah, no, yeah, yeah, just working with good people, doing good work.
Yeah, life is short. Be kind, be
Hmm.
clear, work hard.
Exactly. Yes, that's the tenets. Yeah.
Love all of that. Jen, thank you for all of that. That was brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure getting to talk to you, and yeah, I'm excited to chat more whenever we do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to everybody for watching. I hope you learned a lot. And thanks again, Jen, for being here.
Thanks. Take care.